I think Saweetie is a big example of what happens when the work isn't working. It's hard to look at 2,000 units first week coming from someone like her and being super shocked or super surprised or even being disappointed in her artistry to a degree. Is this not normal for people who are pretty much marketed more so as influencers to not do as well in the music field? I don't think that's a big deal. I saw plenty of tweets and a lot of hate and a lot of threads about basically how Saweetie basically has failed as an artist at this point because she wasn't able to translate such a massive following on social media into interest in her music. But I find it very hard for influencers to do that in general. And I know it might be disrespectful to a degree to call her an influencer, but that's mainly what she's marketed as, a pretty attractive young girl who has a glamorous persona. I think how a lot of these younger women are at least marketed is almost kind of like Paris Hilton lifestyle meets hip hop. And then they're pushed throughout the media in that way, very rarely going viral for anything music related. So I really don't feel the need to have a conversation about like quote unquote female rap as if Saweetie is a representative of that whatsoever when she's not. Sure, she is a female that makes rap music, but I don't think that's ever been her big bag or where she gets majority of her attention from or support. Granted, she is Grammy nominated. She has put out hit singles before, most of which are usually sampling another classic record. It just seems a part of the blueprint or a part of the formula. Once you have a following, you eventually have to make music at some point. Whereas she otherwise could have been just fine with her McDonald's deal or her multiple clothing deals or just making probably thousands of dollars on Instagram with posting clothes or food. And I'm not saying that eliminates Saweetie from potentially making great hip hop music or becoming one of the top names in rap. But none of the support that I've ever seen for Saweetie has come from her music. It's always come from people either thinking that she was attractive, seeing that she was connected to the Migos in the form of her being in a relationship previously with Quavo. And that's really it. I mean, even Saweetie markets herself like that. I make music for pretty girls. I mean, if that's your marketing scheme, then cool. But what does that mean? What does pretty girl music even sound like? These just aren't good selling points. They aren't great foundations for you to build a successful rap career out of. So I go to someone like Blueface as another example so that people don't think that this is some attack on women because Saweetie didn't sell well her first week. Blueface is another artist who has been marketing himself as an influencer who just happened to get signed off of a major hit. Now, I don't remember if that deal that he signed was because of Tatiana or another song, but I know Tatiana had multiple remixes. Label that he signed to was trying their best to redistribute the music by having people like YG, Cardi B hop on remixes for it. All of that didn't save Blueface from ultimately dropping his own debut record where he undersold, and again, people clowned him for it. He had crazy features on there, even a feature from 6ix9ine, who at the time was hot and popping, and none of that drove extra traction toward his music. I think he sold 13,000 first week or less. But now when you hear the name Blueface, you don't hear him being talked about in the same context as you did before. 2-3 years ago, when you were talking about Blueface, you'd be talking about whether or not he could find the beat. Now when you're talking about Blueface, you're talking about him in the context of domestic violence as it pertains to his relationship with Shawn. Seeing them ruin streamers' setups, fight publicly. Point is, Blueface is not making money off of music right now. He's making money off of being a celebrity, making money for reasons outside of his music, which is why I feel comments made from Sunny Digital would have been better placed at someone like a Blueface as opposed to someone like a Saweetie. Blueface at the start of his career was marketed as a rapper, and that's it. Majority of Saweetie's fans probably don't even listen to rap like that. It also doesn't help that Saweetie's music for the most part is trash. I just think people are grossly overestimating the power of Instagram followers and social media as it pertains to translating it into musical sales. She didn't get signed because she had 13 million IG followers. She got signed because she had a hit single that was developing traction. At the end of the day, if you don't really have a social media presence like that, the label will help you build that. Bro, I saw Saweetie on stage and genuinely thought to myself, damn, that's crazy. She performing. That's good for her. Wait, what song is she performing? I don't even know she made music. That was my legitimate thought at the time. That whole "Let's Go" meme, bro. I'm like, what song did she make for her to have to do that? And I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm genuinely confused. Like, I've heard none of her music outside of those 2 hits. I would think it would be a bigger surprise if Saweetie sold well, not that she's selling low. In the same way that I would be surprised if Blueface started to sell crazy. Why? Because he's known for controversy, not for music. Saweetie is known for her looks, not for music. A hit single with no great bodies of work isn't going to turn you from social media influencer into musical icon overnight, especially when the music that you make is trash. So the next layer of this that we need to unpack is misogyny. I know you don't want to talk about it. I'm tired of the gender war too, but Joe Budden apparently makes an incredibly ridiculous statement saying that I don't want to hear Saweetie's music until she addresses the Quavo or Lil Baby situation. Did you fuck him or not? Which is a crazy question for a man as old as he is to ask. Why do you care? Why would that prevent you from listening to someone's music? I mean, I'm sure you wouldn't tell Offset, hey, I don't want to hear from you musically until you tell me what you did with Saweetie, because you have a bigger allegiance or loyalty to Quavo than she does, but whatever. Which is what I assume made Saweetie ask this incredibly ridiculous question. And I call it ridiculous because, yes, fucking obviously. Have you not noticed? No shit. Now, the next question, once you acknowledge that, is to figure out why. Now, at its core, do I think it's misogynistic for men to not want to listen to women in hip hop simply because they're women? 100%. But to act like this premise that men don't want to listen to women in hip hop for no reason is the foundation that we're dealing with here, I think that's disingenuous. And I had this conversation about women in hip hop about 2 years ago when Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion released Wet Ass Pussy. I said that of course misogyny in hip hop is a bad thing, but you are not going to get yourself out of that misogynistic trope by making a big chunk of your career / persona the same things that you're over-sexualized for. And I'm only speaking in the context of the mainstream. And that isn't to say that that isn't welcome in music. It just might not be welcome in rap. There's a reason why an artist like SZA, who is kind of sexual in the way that she's been promoting this most recent output, Jhené Aiko, who has historically sung about her pussy and other things, obviously. It sounds weird, but I think the way it comes across in rap is as if it's a bitter topping to a meal that doesn't have much flavor. It can just come off as brash or make you cringe because certain content, regardless of how much you'd want it to fit, isn't suited for certain aesthetics. If we're talking about sexuality, the way people receive it is just as important. And for plenty of listeners, I think the way they'd rather receive that sexuality is through a more sensual wormhole like maybe R&B. Otherwise, why would so many women MCs get so much flack for rapping about sex, whereas R&B singers have been doing it for generations and no one bats an eye? And I think you'd run into a similar problem if men in hip hop started rapping about how much dick they sling on a rap song over an 808. It would just sound weird. And I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel. But at the same time, it's not something that you can look at and say is entirely that person's fault when they're so easily incentivized to do that particular thing to sell records. At the end of the day, there are countless men in the comment section that'll defend any young rapper who's a male for signing a deal with a record label because they want to hear him talk about the violence in his community, so they'll justify him signing his name on that dotted line and making music that caters to what that label wants and ultimately what that fan base wants, but won't be charitable to a situation where a young woman is basically making rap music in that way because sex sells. And women aren't the main consumers of that sex, it's men. I think rap is the only genre in music where men mind women being too sexy or over-sexualizing themselves. Rap, for the most part, is an incredibly diverse scene, even when you dive into some of the more mainstream acts. But women, not so much. I can't picture any woman in hip hop, regardless of how good she is with her pen, her voice, getting to the level of a Nicki Minaj without doing some of the things, following some of the tropes that Lotto, Saweetie, Coi Leray have had to follow in order to maintain relevancy. Now consider most people are lowest common denominator, not insulting anyone, but most people aren't going to go out of their way to go and find music that's really, really great. They're going to listen to what's on the radio or what's the top on streaming services. And oftentimes you're going to find a lot of examples of Cardi, Meg, Nicki, Doja, Lotto. Now, what do these artists all have in common? They all can be viewed as attractive. You look at the top rappers in male-dominated rap music, all these niggas ugly. Okay, obviously not all of them, but you don't need looks to be a successful rapper as a man. And the reason this is important is because very rarely will your numbers be inflated by people supporting you simply because you're attractive. And I think that's a part of the fear for plenty of young women in hip-hop. Do they actually like me for me? And you won't find that out until you drop your music. It's one of the main reasons Ice Spice has made a lot of noise. Now, I know you thought I was feeling you is like real like catchy sometimes. I know it's funny to repeat, but it's not a great song. I know why you saving every Ice Spice song to your library. I know why you got her music videos bookmarked. I know you. You're not low. I know what you are. But no one's talking about Ice Spice's career trajectory. They're talking about how within a year she might end up on OnlyFans. And that's not just because she makes trash music. A good deal of those talking points come from the premise that she is an attractive woman who just happens to rap, but garnered a good portion of her audience from being attractive. When Designer, Lil Pump, Smoke Perp, all these artists fell off, people definitely clown them. But the reason that the clowning was so much heavier on these individuals as opposed to Saweetie, which is why I don't feel like anyone should be upset that she's getting somewhat criticized for selling low, is because for rappers who are promoted as such and only as such their entire careers, when they fall off or they don't sell well, they are hurting financially. They cannot feed or support themselves or their family. So the image of them is completely warped. Whereas with Saweetie, whose main bag doesn't even come from music, is being so heavily defended in this case when I feel like her image is going to be just fine. At the end of the day, if she were to end up getting dropped from her label, financially, I would say she's better off. Saweetie will be absolutely fine selling 2K first week. She's not dependent on the music to live, in my opinion, based off what I'm able to see. And it being just an EP, I think she may do bigger numbers if she makes a full album, though I wouldn't count on it or be surprised if she still doesn't sell that well.